Right. I think we are.
All right. Good morning, everybody. This is Travis Measley with the Texas Junior Golf Tour. It is Friday, February 4th. Hope everybody, if you're listening to this the same day, is staying warm and staying safe. I've got Todd Ohlmeyer and Jennifer McNeil here with me on this podcast. We thought since everybody's at home and trying to stay warm, we would take this opportunity to Todd and Jennifer are two of the heads of Recruiter Elite, which is an online recruiting tool, a database, a research platform, an educational, continuing education tool that we at the Texas Junior Golf Tour have partnered with now for the last couple years to give access to all of our TJGT members, get access to the Recruiter Elite platform at no cost as part of your membership. And you also get some of these really cool recruiting Q&As, thought podcasts where you can really learn a lot more about the recruiting process. So what we're going to do today is I've gathered some questions on the recruiting process, on details and timelines and things like that. And we're going to kind of do a rapid fire Q&A with both Todd and Jennifer. And at the end, if we have time, Todd and Jennifer will kind of run through the Recruiter Elite platform to kind of give you guys a quick look at how you can utilize doing some of the learning centers and things like that to really assist you in the recruiting process. So Todd and Jennifer, thank you both so much for being here. And without further ado, we're going to get right to it. Todd, you've got some slides you're going to put up as we run through some of these questions.
Yeah, thanks, Travis. We're excited. Jennifer and I are excited to be here and share a little bit and hopefully answer some questions that your members have asked. And Jennifer and I will be out at events throughout the year. And if you see either one of us, please feel free to stop us and ask us questions. That's why we're there, is to share our experience with you, as both of us are former college coaches and still very much involved in the junior and college game. So if you do see us, please do not hesitate to stop and ask us questions. That's why we're out there, is to help you. So Travis, you said you had some questions. So we put together a few slides if you want to kind of go through them, and we'll answer them as best we can.
Yeah, so I think if I'm correct, Todd, the first thing we're going to talk about, one of the big questions that I got was we're on the same page.
Yeah, I broke up for a second there. I think we're asking about scholarships. And so
yes, the big question I got was many questions revolving around explaining the scholarship numbers and limits to us, both on the men's and the women's side, and even down to the junior college and NAIA, if you guys can.
Yeah, so here's a quick slide about scholarships and the maximum number of scholarships that Division I, II are allowed to provide for student athletes. This is the maximum number. That doesn't necessarily mean that's the amount that the school offers. Sometimes schools or even conferences have limitations on how much of a scholarship that they can, their member institutions or their school will extend. But this is a good baseline to go off of when wondering about scholarships. And the one question that Jennifer and I get asked a lot is that 4.5 new every year, and it's the entire, for D1 men's, for the entirety of that year, between all the players on the team, there's 4.5 total scholarships. And so that means there's we'll say a huge pot of money, and divided up however the coach sees fit among the members of the team. It's not every year there's another new 4.5 scholarships coming in. That's how many you're allowed to have the entire time that, or the entire calendar or school year, if that makes sense.
So just real quick, extrapolating off this slide, I'm sure people want to know on Division III, both, both men's and women's, it says no scholarships. Can you maybe expound on that? So does that mean if I go play golf at a Division III program, I'm going to have to pay my own way no matter what? How does it work at the Division III level? Can they help me get money other places?
Jennifer, you want to handle that one?
Sure. So similar to what Travis is saying, yes and no. I mean, there's a ton of financial aid opportunities. Financial aid is large in part can be based off of your academic resume through high school, your SAT, ACT, all of that information, and how you rank in your class can really elevate that for you. As well as a lot of those universities allow outside scholarships. So I know people apply for different scholarships through different golf organizations, Lions Club, those kind of things. But those are all questions that you would want to talk with the financial aid department about, specifically if they accept those and how that would affect your playing for that university. But I know you can also apply for grants and aid. There are a bunch of different ways that you can go about it. So it doesn't mean no scholarship. It just means no athletic scholarship is offered.
And do some of these numbers play out similarly at the JUCO or the NAI level? And I'm sorry, the NAIA level regarding scholarship numbers, or is it totally different?
They're pretty similar, and I don't have those off the top of my head here. But yes, there are scholarship opportunities available at the junior college and the NAIA level as well. So definitely something to look into when talking with coaches at either of those is what what kind of scholarship opportunities they provide.
Excellent. We'll move on to the next series of questions. I got a couple questions, multiple questions, kind of centered on the COVID-19 and still some of the lingering effects. We'll kind of read some of these off. Could you give a quick rundown of how you guys think COVID-19 is still affecting the future classes, 2022, 2023, 2024? And do you think that team sizes, scholarship numbers will go back to normal anytime soon?
Yeah, this is a hard one, honestly, and it's been tough for everybody going through it from a COVID perspective. This is something that I posted on our Instagram feed at some point this year, just showing the growth. On the left side there is the girls increase, and on the right is the boys. And kind of like what I say there on the one on the right, if it seems like it's harder to find a spot, that's because it is. There's just a golf boom going on. We all know that. You can see, I haven't been able to, and I'm going to start tracking this now just to have a better idea of, where, the 2020s were in February of 2018. So to know whether that's a high number or a low number for 2023 or 2024, I just don't know. But if you look at just 2023, it's already above, everybody except for 2022. And that number will go up by the end of the spring, if not summer, for sure, on the boys' side. And same thing on the girls. I think, both sides are increasing just because a lot of people are playing golf. More people are playing golf than ever before. I think when COVID hit, we had a lot of people maybe leave other sports because they were able to play golf outdoors, and it was one of the only things that you could do. And so I think we're seeing more growth from that perspective. There's some other factors too, and Jennifer, you want to comment on any of those, or I can go on too. But
no, you and I were kind of having a conversation earlier about how COVID in general has affected with the COVID year, and how I specifically have seen a lot on the women's side of people who have chosen to take their COVID year, go ahead and graduate because they completed maybe their degree plan and go play and earn a master's degree. And so that's kind of changed the transfer portal quite a lot too, because you see a lot of kids that finished their playing and maybe their 4 years at a specific university, earn their degree, and now they want to pursue a master's degree that maybe that current university doesn't offer. So there's a lot of shuffling around. On the women's side, I'm seeing a ton of that. I don't know how much you see on the men's side.
Yeah, there's that happening on the men's side too, and then just also with everybody kind of going along with those two things of getting another year of eligibility and the ease of the transfer portal. It's just making it a little bit harder for incoming freshmen than anywhere else. Because a coach can say, okay, look, I know what this player's done, even if they're transferring, before they've graduated, they've got 2 years under their belt of playing at college, and they know what those scores are versus they're seeing scores at the junior level, but they don't know if that player is going to translate to college. So I think that's also making it a little bit harder as coaches are maybe taking more of a chance on a transfer that's got a little bit of experience versus incoming freshman that has zero experience.
So what would you guys recommend, for especially 2022s, maybe even 2023s, strategy wise, how, versus regular years, is there, do you look at, do you maybe widen your search or look at a JUCO or an NAIA to start, just try to get into college and start playing, and then look at the transfer portal later, strategically, how can a 2022 or a 2023 really maximize their opportunities in this, stranger time?
Yeah, this is a hard one because for me, I think it's really hard to go to a school and have a true experience if you're already thinking of transferring. So I'm not a huge fan of going, especially if you're going to a JUCO, like that's obviously going to happen because you're done in 2 years no matter what. But by going to a 4-year school, thinking, oh, I'm just going to transfer in a year or two, you're not buying into what the coach is doing. You're never really like committing to your team or your teammates. So I don't love that plan. I know it's maybe not a popular opinion or what people want to do, but that's just kind of my thought is you got to go buy in, do everything you can to be a great member of that team and program. And, you could evaluate it at the end of the year, but that's my thought. What I tell families, you just got to hopefully find the right fit. And sometimes that means, managing your expectations a little bit and maybe it's shifting because, what might have been a target or an actual school 1 year is now shifted a little bit because there's more players and there's more players sticking around.
I also feel like if you kind of go in with that transfer mentality, it puts a lot of extra stress on you as a player. You think about the 4 years you spend in high school working to try to get a scholarship, and then now you're going to do that for a whole nother year with the intentions of transferring. And then if it doesn't work out and you're not playing well, now, what's the plan there? So I'm in agreement with Todd. I think you have to go into your collegiate experience all in and buy in to have the best possible experience. I mean, as former coaches, I don't think either one of us are going to be big advocates for, oh, you can just go for a year and transfer. But I know that is a lot of things that folks think about. But I just think that puts a lot of unnecessary pressure. But I think when you're coming out of high school, given the circumstances that we're in, I really think you have to cast a much wider net for your groups of universities that you're considering. Whereas before you may have had a much smaller, 3, 5, 6 universities that you were really interested in. But I just think that the game has changed a little bit. And when you're looking now, if you cast a much wider net, you may end up with a school you didn't even know about or you had never even heard of. And now all of a sudden it's the greatest school and you go there and you have the most amazing career. So I think I would be careful right now not to box yourself into a specific corner and cast a pretty wide open net.
Cool. Well, that actually leads us perfectly into the next set of questions that came in regarding contacting those coaches and building relationships. A lot of people ask, and we get this question a lot, is what's the best, or maybe more so, what's the most appropriate way to, start making that contact with a college coach, to communicating with them, to getting their attention, and then how much is, how often, what's the proper, protocols to go through? A lot of times people will say, I feel like I'm bothering them. I feel like I'm calling or emailing way too much. Do you have any guidelines, or is there any sort of set number or process you can give us?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is like, I'll actually touch on that in a second. So I'll just say this: the first thing is, and the easiest way, and the only way you really can do early on is through email. Um, but I think a couple things to keep in mind is trying to personalize the emails you send. Coaches can read through when it's like obviously like a copy and paste, or occasionally sometimes it's a copy and paste of a personalized email, and you've got the wrong coach or school. It's happened. It happens. It's kind of just like sending the wrong text to somebody. I mean, you don't want to do it, but it happens. But just making sure you're going through that. But I think the key is knowing about kind of brevity and short and sweet, because you've only got to put down here about, you might only have 15 to 30 seconds to catch a coach's attention. And so you got to find a way to stand out. And so, we have kind of the generic subject line in there, but if you want to try to throw something funny out there or interesting that's going to really maybe have the coach be like, well, I got to open this email and see what it is. I think it's worth taking a shot. I don't know, Jennifer, if you got anything to add on that.
Yeah, I got an email one time from a kid that said, you need me on your team, or something along those lines. And I was like, all right. So I clicked into that just to check out what she had to say. But yeah, I mean, I agree with Todd. That subject line comes across on most of their phones when they're out watching their kids play or practice or whatnot, and the email pops up on their cell phone. That subject line a lot of times will pop up too. And you can see Todd's got on that slide there, the player score at that recent tournament. When they see that score, it's like, oh, okay, like I need to click in here and see who this is. And kind of with regard to what Travis was saying earlier, if I could tell just a really quick story, one of my players that played for me, her emails were going to my junk, and I had no idea. So to this day, she likes to give me grief about I didn't actually recruit her. She had to recruit me, but her emails were all coming into my junk mail. And one of my former players who was friends with her actually reached out to me on her behalf. But when I went back through, I did find all of those emails in my junk folder. So sometimes those things happen too. So I can understand if you're not getting responses back from those coaches, how it can give you a little bit of anxiety. But I think Todd's going to talk a little bit about how often you should send emails and your email updates. But just keep in mind that some things happen like that too. Your email may go to their junk box.
Yeah, and coaches get a lot of emails, and so I think just you staying politely persistent is what they want and what you need to do, and understand that they might not reply to every email that you send, and that's okay. And they can't reply, until after June 15th of your sophomore year. So if you're sending stuff early on, they really can't reply other than thank you for your email. That's about it. So. And then, I think, as a freshman and sophomore, every 2 to 3 months with some updates about what's going on. And then, as you get older and things get a little heavier, you just need to do it a little bit more often. But always include like your upcoming tournament schedule. You just never know when coaches are going to get out there to watch. And so just providing them an easy opportunity to know when you're playing is always extremely helpful.
And then what about phone calls or supplementing with FaceTime visits, when not FaceTime on the computer, like literally popping in on an unofficial visit, or if you're touring a campus, things like that. Is that something that the coaches will respond to, or do you recommend really sticking to email? That goes back to what is too much, what is not enough, does the squeaky wheel get the grease kind of deal?
Yeah, I think look, it's very easy to hide behind your computer and email. Coaches are going to realize that you're probably getting out of your comfort zone if you're making a phone call. And so they're going to appreciate that. And that, as much as you want to recruit, you want to be recruited, the coaches want to almost be recruited or show that you have interest, kind of like what Jennifer was saying just a moment ago. And so, so I think that, and Jennifer, you want to talk about visits at all, like for unofficial visits or campus tours and things like that?
Yeah, I would say unofficial visits. If you have an unofficial visit set up, I would definitely let the coach know ahead of time. I know for most golf coaches, you're not on campus very often, and if you are, you're certainly not there very long. So your chances of getting in front of a coach are maybe a little bit smaller if you just kind of pop in. But if you let them know you're going to take a campus tour, you have an unofficial visit scheduled, they may be able to make time in their schedule to at least minimum meet you. But if you're looking at, actively at a university and you're interested in making an official visit, that's something that you definitely want to communicate with the coach. And as you kind of delve into your communications with them, you can start having that conversation about making an official visit and getting on campus and meeting the players and whatnot. But if I can add even to this email information, I think if the so much is social media driven right now, and I think if you can get on and follow the universities and the coaches and the players on Instagram, Twitter, any kind of social media platform that you guys use, I think that's huge. And most of the time, if you go follow a team, a university page, or a player specifically, whatnot, coach, a lot of times they'll follow you back. And then as far as that goes, make sure that your Instagram and your posts are all pretty appropriate. You want to make sure that you're putting yourself out there appropriately so that, maybe they're interested in you via your email and they go to your Instagram page and they're like, ooh, I don't know. So you want to make sure that you're really doing a good job of presenting yourself on all platforms really well. I tend to recommend to people that you have a golf specific Instagram page where you're kind of uploading your progress and your highlights, and you've got good pictures and interactions with your own teammates so that they can kind of see you in their environment. They're doing the same. They're putting information on their Instagram, Twitter. They're putting information out there that they want recruits to see. So make sure that you're using those platforms appropriately. But it's a great way to get into, kind of seeing behind the scenes and kind of get their attention.
And Jennifer, that story you told about the one young lady whose emails were going to your junk mail, and you mentioned something else that I want to ask you about. I'm glad you said this. You mentioned that a player on your team who that young lady happened to know kind of reached out to you just to mention her. Is there a way that element of recruiting can fit in for a player if, say, a similar situation, I'm interested in a school and I happen to know someone on the, currently on the team, would you recommend players using that avenue as far as just trying to get into the ear of a coach or get their attention? How does that kind of play out?
I definitely recommend that. I mean, like Todd was saying earlier, coaches are crazy busy and they're getting so many emails, especially if you're in a different state or even a different country, like kids that are coming in from different countries, that coach may never have an opportunity to see a player play. But if you're from Texas and you're in a school in Florida, and that coach may not get a chance to get down to Texas to see your friend that you played high school golf with play, I think it's really, really valuable to kind of reach through that person, especially, if that's a school you're interested in and you have a good relationship with that player. I think that's a great way to do it. And I know I got a lot of players that way. I don't know about you, Todd. I'm sure you probably did too.
Yeah, I mean, I think kind of one of the things that sticks out to me is that you just kind of said about other countries, and it happens with states as well, like outside. But if you look at a lot of teams that carry international players, a lot of times they're from the same country or the same area, and definitely the same continent, where, a player might say, hey, this is the best guy in my hometown, and he's as good as anybody on our team. So bring him in, coach. And the coach is going to, if the coach trusts that player, they're going to do that. And it happens, for high schools and regions as well. Where I mean, there's countless examples of high school players or teammates talking up other teammates as part of the recruiting process. So if you have a connection with another player or a player on that roster, I think it's definitely great to mention that. Maybe you're playing a TJ event with somebody who's going to XYZ state, and you played with them twice in the last 3 events. Well, like let him know you're interested, and that's a way to help. Or playing, kind of getting off on a tangent here too, but playing in amateur events, trying to qualify for the Texas AM or the US AM, you're going to play with college players in the qualifier. I mean, you might even play with college coach. So, it's a good way to test yourself from a golf perspective also. But yeah, any relationship that you can use to help get your name out there is always great.
Let's talk about schools in general and in specific a little bit. We get a lot of questions all the time in this area. One of the big things is, how do I know if I can compete, or fit in at a school, in some way to the next level?
Well, this is one Jennifer and I both love. I think everybody should. Is you got to find the right fit for you. And I stole this from somebody. I think I put it on our Instagram feed as well. But you got to find what's the right fit for you. And every opportunity is a life-changing one. And don't get caught up in where your friends are going or where someone's saying you should go. You're on your own journey. You need to figure out what makes the most sense for you. And there's obviously a lot of ways to figure that out. One of them, is using the Recruiter Elite app, where you can get a good idea of whether you're in the region or the zone of scoring and academics and budget and all that by using our search tool. So that's definitely one way.
What about just to extrapolate on that question, a lot of times we also get the questions of, hey, I don't, a lot of people are, well, I need to stay in these states, or I need to, I'm looking at these specific schools. But then we get kids that go, or parents that go, hey, look, we don't care. My son or daughter just really loves the game and she really wants to play. Are there pockets of the country that, we should look at, or are there places that really like Texas players? Or, when you have a player that is so wide open, how do you recommend they tackle that process without going, well, my list of schools is 250 schools long?
I think you have to have a little bit of a mindset of kind of what you want to major in, and kind of tackle the university that might have, I mean, obviously you may change your major throughout your course of your college experience, but if you kind of have an idea of who's offering a major you're interested in, that could narrow it down a little bit. I also know if you're looking at universities that have indoor facilities, if you're looking at going to play at a school in the northern part of the country, but they don't have an indoor facility of any kind, then that really narrows your window. So I think you kind of want to look at their websites as well and make sure that you're looking at schools that during the winter months you're actually going to get to practice and you're going to get the experience that you're going for. To me, those are important things. I mean, you may want to take 2 or 3 months off, I guess, but when you're looking and you're casting this wide net and you're looking all over the country, if they're going to get snow from November through April or March, April, then you want to look at their schedule, where they're traveling, where they're getting to play on spring break, and where they're playing in February, what parts of the country they're traveling to. I think those are all really important things to look into.
Yeah, and I think kind of piggybacking on that, college golf is a huge commitment time-wise, and I think sometimes people get lost or forget that or don't realize that, and sometimes people understand that, and so maybe traveling north where you're going to have a little bit shorter of a season is something that you're looking for, where it's like, hey, I want to play some golf, play pretty full into November or end of October, beginning of November, and then, maybe pick it back up and more regularly at the beginning of March. Some of those northern opportunities might be the right fit. And a lot of places now do have indoor facilities where they're at least able to hit some balls or go somewhere to hit some balls, and they'll still do workouts, but it's obviously not as intense. But there's also some really good competitive schools that are in cold weather. Jennifer and I both know a lot of really good programs that the weather doesn't seem to affect whether they're good or not. Because if you can play, you can play. And so, I have this slide from, I forget if it's a couple of years ago, but from Amy Anderson Olsen. She did great in the U.S. Women's Open. And she went to North Dakota State. Everybody thought she was going to go to a school in Florida because she won the U.S. Junior in 2009, but she wanted to stay closer to home, and she's had a pretty good professional career, even though she went to school in what people would say is not the ideal place for golf. So you have to just find what's the right fit for you, and a program and a coach that's doing the things that you think are right, as well as the academic side.
And that takes research and time, right? I think caught up in the name on, this is a cliche, but the name on the front of the jersey or the name on the football field, that you can get enamored with that when that may not be an absolute right fit for you at all. So it seemed, utilizing, to give you, a little plug here, utilizing y'all's platform is a great start, a great stepping stone into, stripping away the importance of the name and instead trying to hone in on culturally what's right: education, competition, time, weather, facilities, finances. It seems like those, the kids that are the happiest are the ones that put the work in on the research side and get the most out of the result.
Yeah, and kind of going along with that too is, if big time football and basketball and fraternities and sororities and that big university experience is what you want, and your golf doesn't match up with that, I wouldn't have recommended this 5 to 7 years ago, but looking at club golf is definitely something that I've had some clients now do, and I recommend to certain people based on what their, what's going on with their situation. They play 3 or 4 events a semester. The PGA of America and Strixon have pumped a bunch of money into it. They've got some really smart, solid crew running the events. And it's a way to have that experience, but still stay competitive in college golf. And I would never say this, but now it's actually happened. Like, there's been a couple instances where players have gone from the club team to the actual team. One on the women's side, actually a couple on the women's side at Wake Forest, a player on the Michigan men's team. So again, I wouldn't bank on that happening, but it is a way to go stay competitive, but get that overall college experience that you're looking for.
Let's move on to a big swath of questions we got, and that we always get, I'm sure you guys get as well, is about, playing from the junior golf side. As you're doing recruiting, the playing is a huge part of it, and the rankings. We get this question all the time. How do I know if I'm playing enough tournaments to be recruited, or how do I know if my ranking is high enough or where it needs to be, or am I in the right tournaments to be recruited? How do you start navigating that?
I'll throw a couple things out, and Jennifer, you can add on to that. My biggest thing is, like, you should play as often as you can. Like, coaches want to know that you want to play in tournaments and you want to play. I also know that when I say as often as you can, I mean with what works in for your time, your budget, your family time. It's not always easy. Obviously, if you live in some of the bigger cities where you can sleep in your own bed and just drive to the tournament, that's great, but that's not always the case for everyone. But my biggest thing is just trying to play as many events as you can that your time and budget allow. And I don't want you to break the bank on playing in tournaments. I want, you have a plan with your family of what makes the most sense, and trying to play in, as many local or regional events as you can. And if you can sprinkle in some bigger ones, whether it's AJGA or national amateur events, like that's great. But if you post scores and you're playing well, coaches are going to find you. So I don't know, Jennifer, if you got anything to add on that.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with you. And I think that in our sport, there's no greater way to showcase your talents than to play in tournaments. It's not a team sport, so you're out there on your own and you're going to get that playing time regardless of how many events you're signed up in. So, I mean, I think that's a great way to showcase your talents. And like Todd said, if maybe you've flown under the radar and you haven't been heavily recruited, but there's a coach out there watching a guy or gal in your group and they take notice to you and they start to kind of say, oh, I'm kind of interested in this player. And that's kind of how the marriage begins. They start recruiting you from that point. So it gives you a chance as well to get yourself in front of some other coaches that maybe have never seen you play or that you've never emailed or you've never spoken with. So it kind of gives you an opportunity to get in front of some new folks as well.
Jennifer, I wanted to ask you about Junior Golf Scoreboard and how you would recommend to your players to utilize Junior Golf Scoreboard, where you're ranking and your ranking. Yeah, there's we get a lot of those, very specific questions around Junior Golf Scoreboard. But can you just talk about holistically, about how you think Junior Golf Scoreboard should fit into a player's strategy when it comes to recruiting, and maybe how it fits in from a coach's standpoint when it comes to recruiting?
Yeah, and I think that's changed quite a bit as we've gotten further and further along into college golf. I think it's changed a lot. Junior Golf Scoreboard rankings are great. They're definitely wonderful to have and to showcase to coaches, and they can see that when they go on there and look up different players. They're going to see your ranking. But at the same time, I don't necessarily feel like it has to be the end all be all. I mean, I feel like we're constantly in golf chasing rankings anyway, even when you get to college, and Todd and I can sit here for 2 hours and talk about college rankings, but you're constantly chasing these rankings, and it can be sometimes, I think, a little discouraging to players if they're not getting the ranking that they feel they've earned or deserve and whatnot. So, like Todd said earlier, numbers don't lie. I mean, if you're shooting the numbers, you're gonna get the recruitment that you're after. But I know Todd can talk a little bit more about Junior Golf Scoreboard, and they have a lot of great platforms, and they have a lot of I know Todd really likes their resume portion.
Yeah, from a Junior Golf Scoreboard, like Jennifer kind of said, it's a part of the equation, but it's not the only thing that coaches look at from a recruiting perspective. Like they use that as a piece of what they're trying to do. I do think their resume feature is pretty strong. I think it also allows coaches to stumble upon a player. Your contact information is right there. So I do think it's a really nice feature that they offer. Travis shared with us some of the questions. I'm not a huge fan of like protecting against your ranking and trying to not play because it's a certain level. Like I don't think you want to dodge opponents. I think you want to just keep playing. That's my opinion and philosophy, and I can see where other people might be coming from on that perspective. But from a coaching perspective, I always wanted to see a player who's playing a lot.
I think one of the things that people don't appreciate about Junior Golf Scoreboard, or that gets lost in the mix about Junior Golf Scoreboard, that, and you guys have kind of touched on this, but everyone, when you think about Junior Golf Scoreboard, you're thinking about, oh, what's my rank? What's the number? My top 1,000, top 500, top 300, top 100. And, that's so hyper focused on. But one of the things in talking to you guys and in talking to a lot of coaches, and even it's helpful to me sometimes, that I look at with Junior Golf Scoreboard, is it's an awesome tool to be able to see, where have you played recently? Where have you played? What tournaments are you playing in? What did you shoot? And what was the yardage? How many people were in the field? It's without having to go run all, look, all that stuff should be on your resume, but sometimes it's hard to parse through a resume. Sometimes, it's only one person. I think sometimes it gets lost in how valuable Junior Golf Scoreboard is for a player to get, hey, I'm getting my scores out there right away. Any college coach is going to be able to have access to Junior Golf Scoreboard, and if they're scrolling through, oh, I remember Jimmy, he emailed me a couple weeks ago. Well, I just scrolled past him on Junior Golf Scoreboard. Bam, 10 tournaments. I can see everything he's done. To me, that gets lost in how valuable that part of Junior Golf Scoreboard actually is.
Yeah, and going back to kind of the ranking thing too, is like, you hear a lot of football coaches who we hear the most from, but like, they're always focused on the process of working on and improving. And if you're doing the things to help you get better, your ranking is going to improve. And so I try not to, with my one-on-one clients, of not getting too caught up in the ranking, and just more focusing on, hey, like, what are we doing to improve, opposed to, why isn't your ranking this, or you need to get your ranking to that. Like, keep working on your game and improving, and the results will come.
Couple more questions here. On the playing process. I wanted to have you guys, if you could maybe define a little bit for me, when you're saying you guys have both impressed upon the importance of playing in tournaments, but could you give us a little bit of, when you say tournament, for what do they expect? What's kind of the, what's the, I don't want to say bare minimum, but what's your baseline standard for, okay, this is the level of tournament, or the type of tournament, or the format of tournament you need to be playing in, and then working your way up. We hear a lot of 1 day, 2 day, 3 day, yardage, field size. Without getting too specific, could both of you kind of define what that means?
Go ahead, Jen.
Yeah, sure. I think it's very individualized for each coach and kind of what they're after. I know that I don't want to generalize, but generally speaking, coaches are looking at 2 to 3 day tournaments. And I don't want to take anything away if you go win a 1 day tournament. And don't misunderstand what I'm saying, or you go have a great round, or you play a 1 day tournament, or you're interested in playing a 1 day tournament. So please don't misunderstand what I'm saying here. But I know when in college tournaments, you're playing a minimum of 2 days, whether that's 36 holes, 54 holes, whatever that is. You're going to play 2 to 3 days, and they kind of like to see 2 to 3 days of scores. And I think one of the valuable pieces of that is if you were to have let's say a day that your first day maybe wasn't as great as you expected it to be, but you come out the next day and you really rock it and you play great. And it kind of shows that you bounce back. You didn't let the first day get you down. So I think they like to see that comparison too. Or maybe you shoot a great number the first day and you follow it up with an even better number the second day. That it really is comparing and contrasting. I think for most coaches, they're able to see a couple of days in the body of work. So I know that's kind of one of the things they're looking for. And I know with a lot of my coaching friends, when I talk to them about what they're looking at specifically is they're looking at, maybe you had a bad day, but can you go low? So I think a lot of coaches are looking specifically for your ability to go low, not just go low and stay low. That's great, obviously, but can you go low, and can you show that you can shoot the numbers that they're looking for? And I think sometimes 2 day tournaments give you the opportunity to do that 3 day. So that's just my opinion on that.
Yeah, I mean, I echo everything that Jennifer's saying there too. I think coaches want to see 2 or 3 day events because of what they have what they do when they're playing at the college level. And I think too, if coaches are out watching, also know that sometimes coaches are like, I'm going to watch this player for 4 holes or 5 holes, and don't freak out if like you make a double and the coach leaves. Like that coach might have had it mapped out. Like after we play number 12, I'm walking back to number 1 to catch somebody else off the first tee. Coaches aren't. I mean, obviously, like Jennifer said, they want to see post good scores, but when they're out watching, they're watching way more than what you make on each hole. They're watching how you carry yourself, what you're doing, how you're thinking through each shot. They're listening for contact. They're watching the trajectory of the ball. They're watching so much more than just the scorecard, because they could watch the scorecard from home, and so they're wanting to get a really good feel and sense of who the person is as a player that they're out watching. Unfortunately, on the men's side, there's been men's side Division I. There's been some restrictions in place for recruiting, where it's making it a little bit harder for coaches to get out there. You won't see them as often as you would have 2 or 3 years ago. I don't know if that's going to change anytime soon. I think when you're wondering if or why a coach isn't out watching, some of it is because they've got to really be selective with the number of days that they're able to recruit. So that's why it's really important to keep coaches updated with whatever tournament schedule you have going, so that a coach might look and be like, all right, well, there's 4 guys or 5 guys that are emailing me that are playing in this event. This is worth my time of going out. The days of them going to a high school event and watching one player sadly are gone, which is really unfortunate. And so hopefully that changes. I don't know how serious of talks they are into doing that, but it's definitely hurt the junior golfer from that perspective.
That applies to their assistant coach too, right, Todd?
Yeah, so it's total. So like if a coach and an assistant coach go out to the same tournament, that counts as 2 days, and they can only have 4. I think it's 45 for the entire year. So for a coach that is that a big time program, it's like, oh, I'm going to go watch the high school event just to be supportive of junior golf. Like he just can't do that anymore, because that's too costly for his program. Just sad.
I'm really glad you brought up high school, because I want to end on this question. It wasn't one I provided to you guys, but I think it's one that should be asked, and I want you guys to comment on. And then if we have time, you can delve in a little bit to the platform.
Sure.
Part of a high school golf team, whether no matter how good or bad it is, what do college coaches, how much value do they put in, not necessarily to the scores you shoot on your high school team, but to being a part of a high school team and being able to contact your high school coach to get information on you.
Yeah, I mean, I think look, the high school events, the fields are not as deep as playing in a TJ event or any tournament, because the commitment levels are different between the number 1 guy and the number 5 guy. But I think college coaches are interested in how serious you take it, and how you're trying to help your teammates get better, and all that's involved with being part of a team, and showing that you're taking it serious. Obviously your high school coach will know that, and maybe will take, if they talk to your, a college coach, they're going to relay that to them. And so I think taking it serious every time you tee it up is important too. You should set really high standards for yourself in those high school tournaments. If you feel like, they're weak, or they're not as good as that, you're way better than everybody in the field, well, then you should feel like you should win every one of those events, or finish in the top 3 of every event. Make a challenge that you want to make sure you're earning the honor on the first tee of every hole, or on the tee box on every hole that you're playing. Find ways to challenge yourself. If you feel like you're not being pushed enough in your high school stuff. But, if you're not taking it serious, then you're wasting your time. You're not trying to get better. So.
Yeah, and if I could add too, and then we don't need to start a debate on specializing in high school, but one of the things I really liked seeing on a kid's resume was if they played other sports, and not necessarily individual sports, but other team sports. Did they play basketball? Were they a part of, other team sports? Just because it gives me kind of a glimpse into a little bit of a different level of athleticism, maybe that they explored throughout high school or whatnot. And when you're playing a team sport and you're relying on other people, it kind of gives you an idea of what kind of teammate that person would be too. And it gives you, as a college coach, it gives you a chance to kind of look at the kid from a different arena as well. I had a player that I coached that played high school soccer as well as high school golf all the way through high school, and actually went to one of her soccer games and watched her play. And just because I wanted to see what type of teammate she was in a different arena. It's easy to be happy when you're playing great golf, but when you get out on the soccer field, what are you doing to the other girls out there? So it's kind of an interesting thing for me. And I think that I get a lot of questions from people very often of, well, should I quit basketball, or should I quit volleyball, or do I need to quit running track? And I mean, this may not be a popular answer, but I don't think that that's necessary always. I really don't. I mean, obviously there's both sides of the coin to that, but I think it's great to, explore different talents and kind of showcase some different things about you.
Yeah. And just piggybacking on that, I don't know. I think a lot of people saw this, and I think it was the 8 quarterbacks in the NFL playoffs. All were multi-sport athletes in high school, playing 2 or 3 sports. And so there's something to be said about just the skills that go along with those sports, and kind of testing yourself in it in other areas can definitely help. So I agree. I played multiple sports throughout high school, and I know Jennifer did as well. And so, I think it's important, but obviously every family situation is a little bit different too.
Well, we've run through pretty much all the questions, but I was wondering if we had a few minutes, could you guys just maybe give us a quick, 1,000-foot overview run through of.
Yeah, I'll do a real quick overview, and
Maybe.
Travis, we can have you include a link that gives a little bit more detail about how to set up your account, and kind of a demo video, but I'll do a short one here too.
Sure, that'd be great.
So really quick here is you once you establish your profile, man, I was a lot younger in that picture. It's my first coaching photo. Anyway, so there's some pretty cool tools here. So there's the search teams tab, where you can say you want to select Division I and Division II schools we'll go Texas, since we're in Texas, and it will list all the Division II schools that there are. This red, yellow, green tab on the left is based on your scoring average. Is it within range of those coaches? Sadly, there's sometimes a red right now where St. Edward's, where Jennifer and I used to work, no longer has men's and women's golf, men's and women's tennis, men's soccer, because they ended the program. So you might be like, well, why is that? But it's just because the program's not around anymore. But what's pretty cool is you can then click on the team report, which will show basically, where you stack up from academic standpoint, or scoring average, and then your academics and the budget. But what's also nice is there is direct links to the team's website, coach's phone number, email address, direct link to the school's website, some other school data. But it'll work. I'm sharing one. But anyways, if you click on these hyperlinks, it'll automatically open up those tabs, or open up the ability to send the coach an email. So I can then save that school and then click on over here, My Teams, and it will keep that school as a list of teams that I'm in communication with or I'm talking to. And then when I send out an email, I can just put in a note here that I sent an email or transcripts or whatever it is. I sent information, and it kind of records everything that's going on. I recommend people to copy and paste emails as you get them from coaches in there, and that way it's really easy to track what's going on. Mom or dad, grandpa, swing instructor, anybody can get your login information and can go ahead and see how things are going. Right now, unfortunately, we're having some hiccups with the tournament fields, so we can't, unfortunately, can't access those at the moment. Hopefully, we'll get that back up and running. But then there's also a tab here that's got a bunch of recruiting videos. So we've got about 100 videos, scripts, and templates that run through the college recruiting process that can hopefully answer questions you may have about things that are specific to the recruiting process. So, if there's one video that I'd recommend is how to make a swing video and what to include. That one, is, we as coaches have seen tons of swing videos. That's the one that I think people could use the most help on. There's also, as I mentioned, the templates. Here, there's just a bunch of templates that you can look at just to give you an idea. I wouldn't copy and paste and just change a word or two, but gives you an idea of what things look like. And, you can go ahead and then write your own email based on what you're seeing here. So that's a quick overview. I know we've kind of gone on here over a little over an hour, so I know we wanted to cut it a little bit short. But yeah, I mean, that's a access to that app, web-based app, is included in your membership with the TJGT. You won't find it in the App Store. You've got to go through this link that either Donna or I will send an email, or look in your junk email. You may have already gotten it. Once you register with the TJGT, they provide me a list, and then I send out the instructions for how to sign up. But that comes with membership to the TJGT or Rocky Mountain Junior Tour. Please take advantage of that, or feel free to shoot me an email if you've got any questions. Jennifer and I are always here to answer questions. We also provide a free 30-minute phone consultation. So you please take advantage of that. Here's our contact information. I imagine Travis will include that when he sends out the link to this call. So hopefully this has been helpful for everybody, and good luck in your next events. Travis, I think you might be on mute.
I was on mute. My apologies. I was just saying thank you to both of you so much for doing this. Thank you for taking the time to run all through that. Players and parents, if you've made it this far, please take advantage of the contact information here on the screen for both Todd and Jennifer. Don't hesitate to reach out to them. We definitely have had a lot of players, take the time to talk with them, get advice on using the app, doing some research, asking Todd or Jennifer questions. It's definitely something that we want you guys to take full advantage of as part of the Texas Junior Golf Tour or the Rocky Mountain Junior Tour. So with that, I think we'll go ahead and end this call, and looking forward to doing this again soon, and seeing all of you and you, Todd and Jennifer, out at our next tournament when it warms up again.
Great. Thanks, Travis.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. We'll talk again soon.
Okay.